Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to Outdoor and Door Texan. Today I'll be showing you all my homemade spicy jerky recipe. Now I call it simply jerky because this recipe will start with an excellent spicy marinade you can use on multiple types of protein, deer meat, beef, or really any lean red meat. And in hopes to make it as helpful as possible, I'll then be talking y'all through 3 different ways to dry your meat out. We'll discuss tips on using a smoker, using an oven, and the most straightforward method, using a dehydrator. With all that being said, make sure and check the description below for a detailed list of the ingredients and supplies necessary. Once you've got everything rounded up, let's get to cooking. Let's start by building the marinade. In a large non-reactive bowl, add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper, 2 teaspoons of crushed red pepper, 4 to 6 habaneros minced, or since I had very small habaneros from my garden, I used about 8. Half a cup of soy sauce and half a cup of Worcestershire sauce. I don't know why, but I put them in the measuring cup at the same time. 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and finally 1 tablespoon of brown sugar or honey. In my case, I'm using honey that I fermented and infused with garlic, which is just being all extra, not required. Then give everything a good mix with a whisk or a spoon. Now that we have the marinade ready to go, let's talk about protein choices. You can use a number of red meats, just focus on finding 1 to 2 pounds of something very lean, as fat can be problematic with jerky's shelf life as well as the chewiness. Today, I'm using a cut of venison taken from the hindquarter. Venison is naturally a very lean meat throughout, and I'm in the midst of emptying my freezer, making room for the next deer I shoot this coming season, which only makes sense to other hunters. Many people prefer to use offcuts of deer meat to make jerky, while reserving the more choice pieces for directly cooking them. I'm not against that thought process per se, but I also feel that a better cut of meat will make a better jerky, if you can spare it. Beyond deer meat, plenty of people love beef jerky, and a couple of cuts that are often used are flank steak, any of the round cuts, or even sirloin tip. Now you've chosen whatever meat you're using, you'll want to semi-freeze the meat for easier handling and then cut it into thin strips. I recommend slicing it as thin as possible, about 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick. If you like that traditional chewy jerky, slice the meat with the grain. And if you want a more tender jerky, although sometimes it gets close to crumbly, slice the meat against the grain. It's up to you though, and if this is your first time, maybe try both ways to figure out what you prefer. Regardless, just make sure to keep everything uniform in thickness so the dry time will be about the same across all pieces. Once your meat is cut, take a Ziploc bag and combine both the meat and the marinade together. Make sure to get as much of the air out as possible and give everything a thorough rub down to ensure all surfaces are soaking in that marinade. Then, place the bag in your fridge overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and start the actual drying process. Okay, it's been just shy of 24 hours and the meat should have had a good soak in the marinade by this point. Take the strips out and lay them over a sheet of paper towels to rest open air for about 15 minutes. After resting the strips, we're going to make one final touch by adding a little seasoning before drying. For half the meat, I'll be sprinkling my dehydrated hot sauce seasoning, which is a recipe I covered in a whole separate video you can find right here. For the other half, I'll be sprinkling dehydrated chili piquins that I then mashed up and turned into red pepper flakes. Both will give the jerky a lingering touch of heat and spice that'll marry really well with the existing marinade. With that done, let's talk about the different drying options you have. First option up is the oven. This requires no specialty tools besides what most kitchens already have, an oven. A great trick is to take a toothpick and skewer 2 pieces together like this and hang them vertically over the top rack. Make sure to have a drip pan beneath the hanging pieces though to catch any of the drippings. If you don't have toothpicks or just generally don't want to bother with all that prep work, you can also just lay them out over the top rack with a drip pan below, but I've had far superior results with the hang method. Regardless, set your oven to the lowest temp possible, which is usually in the 180 to 200 degree Fahrenheit range. I'd also even keep the door cracked to help keep the heat from building up too much. A big word of warning when using ovens, keep an eye on your meat. Check it every 30 minutes or so until it shows the signs of your preferred doneness, because I've found that the oven sometimes over dries meat much faster than other methods. The second method is using a smoker. If you have a pellet or traditional charcoal smoker that can hold a low temp for hours on end, you'll be well set to make jerky. Simply place your meat strips on the grill, have it set for indirect smoking, meaning no direct heat source beneath the actual meat, and keep a temp around 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Same with an oven, keep an eye on your meat. Check it every 30 minutes or so until you're happy with the end results. The third option is using a dehydrator. Dehydrators are made for this very specific purpose. Simply place the meat on your rack, switch the temp to roughly 160 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever your dehydrator suggests in the manual, and let it run for about 3 to 5 hours, checking it every so often until it hits your desired doneness. After almost exactly 4 hours in my dehydrator, my pieces had the doneness I was looking for. For me, I'm looking for a piece of jerky that is dry and firm, yet still a little bit pliable and easy to bite. Each his own, of course, but we're generally all aiming for a dried out strip of meat. If it's still wet, drippy, or shiny, it probably needs a bit more time. And just like that, you're done. Jerky is a fantastic snack that's low on carbs and high on protein and flavor. If you have a vacuum sealer handy, you can pack these up and keep them in a dark, cool pantry for about 1 to 2 months with zero issue. If using Ziploc bags, I'd try to get as much air out as possible to match a similar shelf life. Once any bag is open though, just make sure to consume everything within a week's time just to be safe. If for some reason you're not eating all the jerky you made within the 1 to 2 month range, you can also freeze extra bags and they'll stay good for double the time, if not longer. Giving my jerky a taste, I found the dehydrated hot sauce pieces had a great base flavor from the marinade and then a slight sharp kick from the hot sauce. Tasting the red pepper flake jerky, there was a much more pronounced hit of heat since those flakes are fresh and front and center, but that same marinade then took over, leaving a great overall flavor once I got to chewing. And speaking of chewing, I felt like I hit that perfect middle ground. The jerky was dry, but not so over dried that it was like jawing on a saddle. Long story short, this recipe is a home run if you're looking for a hint of heat in your next batch of jerky. The overall flavors are well balanced, there's not too much salt, which I think is a constant problem with homemade jerky recipes, and that touch of heat comes in just right to finish things off. Also, like all my recipes, there's room to tweak. If you're looking for something milder, simply add more brown sugar and less peppers. Or if you want to go full throttle, do the opposite. That'll do it for this recipe, and thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions on making your jerky at home. Or, if you're a seasoned pro at making jerky, feel free to share your tips and experience to the conversation. If you're new to the channel, I hope I've been helpful in sharing my perspective, and please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more great content to come. Alright y'all, take care.